Hi there. We are chugging along here to chapter 10 and starting on the third P. So we've done product, we did price, now we're going to do, these next two chapters are about place or distribution. So essentially, what is this third P all about? It's fundamentally about getting the product from the producer to the end user in a timely and an efficient manner. So we'll talk about apples. How do they get from the farmer to your table? How many different ways? You can buy them at a fruit stand. You can buy them at the grocery store. They can go through a restaurant. Running shoes, where are your running shoes made? Where are they sold? All that kind of stuff. So, and then the other thing you want to think about, this is really important, is where you buy the product say about the product itself. So every store has an image, and marketers, just like price, where you sell the price test says something about your product. Also, where you sell it says something about your product. So, you know, a shirt from Walmart versus a shirt from Lord & Taylor, for example. Okay, so we talked about these whole things, supply chains. There's the partners that are both above and below. So the upstream are the materials and raw materials, component parts, all that kind of stuff, all the things that go into creating the product. And then downstream are the people that distribute and sell to the customer. Okay, there's also the value delivery network. That's the companies, suppliers, distributors, and ultimately customers who partner with each other to improve the performance of the entire system and delivering customer value. Essentially meaning that everyone works together to make sure that the product is delivered in a timely fashion and is the best product available and that kind of thing. We talked about the value delivery network in a previous chapter. I believe it was one or two, I'm not sure. Okay, so what we refer to the distribution channels or marketing channels, and essentially when you think of it, a channel, not necessarily a television channel or a radio channel, think of a channel in terms of like a body of water and like a strait, so to speak, and that's really what the marketing channel, that would be the best, I think, the best analogy in terms of its, things flowing through a stream, or flowing through a stream, usually downward. So channel decisions are very important. It can provide a competitive advantage. It does affect the other marketing decisions in terms of how you're going to promote it and how you're going to price it and exactly what the product is going to be. So you might have one product line that you sell at a certain, at your main store, and then there's other product lines that you sell at department stores, for example. And the other thing too is that a lot of times these channel relationships can be very long. Okay, so just to give you an idea, this is from the book, and it's a representation of the options of using a distributor or not using a distributor. It's just easier to use a distributor because they know they're sort of the middleman between knowing the manufacturer and the customer, and it takes away all of that headache for the manufacturer to actually deal with all the different customers. It can be done, and there could be good reasons it's done, but it just makes more sense to use a distributor. Okay, so how channel members add value, because remember, what are the 2 points of marketing? Value creation and building customer relationships, remember? So intermediaries can add value because it can, availability of product, to develop in availability just on the shelf, but also getting the product there, getting it there safely, that kind of thing. You want to make sure, for example, that if you are using, a distributor, that they have a reliable transportation system, or they use reliable transportation. Think too about, I gave the example on that first slide about the apples and the running shoes, and I don't know, I think maybe there was another thing too. I can't remember. Think too about like delivering wine, for example, or beer that comes in bottles, so that's an issue. It has to maintain a certain temperature, or else it's going to go bad. Same thing if you think about other types of produce, but the idea of the bottle really adds something to it, the fragility of the packaging. Also with, with wine, there are, and fruits and vegetables too, there are certain, laws in terms of, passing state lines, and, certain states don't want produce from other states because of insect issues or whatever it may be. So think about all of that stuff when you're thinking about channels, that it's not just simply shipping something out. There's lots of things to consider. Okay, so the channel members, they help with just physical distribution, financing, and they help with some of the risk. Sometimes you'll see with a distributor that they will extend credit. And they also help with promotion, helping negotiate prices. There's all sorts of different things, provide information. It's a really important decision who you work with and making sure you have competent people. Okay, so there could be, essentially, there's a variety of different ways in terms of channel levels. So it's the number, essentially it's the layer, or the number of intermediaries. Think of like ladders on, rungs on a ladder, that bringing the product from the producer to the final buyer. So direct is, there's no intermediary levels. Direct would be the farmer selling the apple at the farm stand direct to you and going home and eating that apple. Indirect is when there's one or more intermediary levels. So there are a variety of different ways that influence it. It talks about it a little bit in the book, but essentially it might impact ownership, how the products are going to go, geographically how they're going to get there, payments, promotional information. So, sometimes if you'll see you go into like a Wegmans or Tops and you see a kiosk or a table set up or whatever, that giving samples or a special display or something like that. Those are that's often part of the channel network that has gotten them in there. It's because the distributor has worked with Yoplait or whatever, and Yoplait has given them a cooler, and so with the idea that Yoplait will be prominently displayed. I'm just using that as an example. I'm not saying that Yoplait does that. I'm just using it as a potential example. Okay, so here we go. On your left-hand side are the consumer and then marketing channels. It's pretty much this. It tends to be the same. With the business customer or the consumer, and instead of going through a retailer, the businesses go through a business distributor, a wholesaler, or manufacturer's rep. But it's the same idea, passing from one to the other. Okay, oftentimes there's channel conflict. Everyone's got their own interest, right? And so it's possible that there might be some timing issues, or maybe someone's giving priority over a different manufacturer, or perhaps they're not, getting the product to the retail outlet. Anyway, so horizontal conflict among firms at the same level of the channel, so among retailers, or vertical could be between the retailer and the distributor, or the retailer and the manufacturer, or whatever. Okay, vertical marketing systems essentially is that this idea of one group or one business entity owning, instead of relying on a third party or a second party, second or third party to get their supplies, they buy that second party or they create that second party. So one example would be Wegmans having, instead of buying from different greenhouses, they open their own greenhouse. Or instead of buying from different farms, they have their own farm. That would be vertical marketing system. So it's when they all work as a unified system. Now, I'm not saying they necessarily have to own it, but they could, usually what happens is that one person has so much control that the other ones cooperate. It's vertical marketing system. Okay, so there we go, conventional, which is on the left, and then the vertical is that there's this, you can see that like there's the grouping together of them, overlapping almost like a Venn diagram. Okay, so horizontal marketing system, two companies join to follow a new marketing opportunity. So it would be maybe Hertz and Marriott coming together. Okay, multi-channel essentially is this idea that you have, instead of, that we'll take the farm, we'll go back to the farmer. So the farmer might sell their product, have a direct marketing system layer, and they would sell their product directly to the consumer. Or they could also sell it to a distributor or a wholesaler who then sells it to the grocery stores. Or maybe they sell it to another wholesaler or distributor who sells it to food, we'll say restaurants, or to the people who make frozen apple pies or applesauce or whatever. So there are there's advantages to it because you can have multiple, it increases your coverage. It could be a little bit harder to control. There could be some conflict involved, but sometimes it's just really necessary to have multiple channels. It depends upon your product. Okay, so there you go. Different consumer segments or different business segments. That's just a visualization of it. Okay, disintermediation is it's a new idea. It's when cut out at the marketing channel and says directly to the consumer. So Spotify, for example, would be an example of disintermediation. So they basically cut out the middleman. Okay, so deciding about it, you have to be, we talked about this so much, and it's so important, looking at the internal and the external environment and trying to, and also planning and what's going on in your company, what's going on in the marketing environment and the external marketing environment. What different alternatives do you have? What are your, what are your objectives? What are your corporate objectives? What's your channel objective? So, for example, iPhones, right? What iPhones in the beginning when they first come out always limit the distribution because they're trying to create scarcity. That's one objective is to create scarcity in the market for them, right? So they might limit where they're going to sell the product at first. Anyway, but it's important, this is, again, people's whole careers center around this. So you just want to make sure that what you're doing matches, what the company is doing matches what it is that they are trying to reach, the goals they're trying to reach, and also being sensitive in terms of what's going on to the environment, marketing environment. Okay, so there's essentially three choices in terms of distribution: intensive, exclusive, and selective. Intensive essentially is selling your product everywhere, making it available everywhere. So, Clairol shampoo is available everywhere. Crest toothpaste is available everywhere. Exclusive distribution is some places, but not all places. They might sell certain types of kitchen equipment, refrigerators, freezers, that kind of thing. It's some stores, but not all stores. Then selective distribution is that you only have one. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I erased what I said about exclusive. Exclusive is that you only sell it at one place. I have these opposite from what I have in my notes. Anyway, so exclusive is you only sell at certain places. So like Radio Shack, usually only high-end places. Radio Shack will be exclusive distribution. Tiffany might be exclusive distribution. It's usually high-end products or very specialized products. Then selective is some but not all. So for example, with the example of the kitchen equipment, it could be exclusive. Kenmore only sold at Sears, but maybe Black & Decker will sell at some stores, but they wouldn't sell at all stores. Or maybe Hamilton Beach will sell at some stores, but not all stores. And again, it goes along with this whole idea of who the customer is, what their objectives are. Okay, so just to review that, and I'm sorry for the confusion. Intensive is everywhere. Exclusive is only certain places, and selective is some but not all. Okay, and then international channels, of course, you have to think about taxes and tariffs and government regulations and being able to set up relationships with distributors in other countries and understanding that. It's just, again, issues with international issues. We always like to talk about that in terms of marketing. We are in this global economy, and you know, every culture, every country has a different culture. Okay. Again, so the marketing channel management, again, it's, you know, what is the actual act of it? What's involved is, you know, selecting who you're going to work with, motivating them, and then evaluating them. So logistics is actually the physical distribution of it, and essentially it's you know, making sure that everything is there at the right time and at the right place. Logistics is the actual, you know, when it get the mechanics of it. But marketing logistics is very important. Communication is very important. Okay, so there we go. You can just see a nice graphic of that. Inbound logistics are things coming in, your raw materials. Outbound logistics is getting it out. Okay, and the things that are included: warehousing, inventory management, transportation, logistics, info management, which is a lot of, you know, scheduling and that kind of stuff. Inventory management is making sure you have the right amount of inventory at the right time. You don't want to have too much. You don't want to have too little. If you have too much inventory, it's just money on the shelf that you're wasting, that you can have something else there, or chances are you paid for it. And if you have too much, then, you know, it's taking up space on the shelves, and it's also for the other products could be at, and then also if you paid for them again, you're not getting any, not able to sell them, and that's a problem. So it's this idea of just-in-time logistics. And if you actually, Walmart is really known for their logistics that they have. It's the warehousing. Their warehousing is an example that I'll try to follow. Okay, transportation. So we talked a little bit about this. I mentioned a little bit about this when we were talking about the wine, but, you know, you want to know about the condition of goods, the expense of it, how the delivery performance, is it a good distributor? There are a variety, excuse me, of modes of transportation. You might use one, you might use all, you might use 3, you might use 2. Okay, so integrated logistics management, again, is this idea that everybody works together and that there's good communication between the groups. Oops. Sorry about that. And that there's communication and coordination among all the people that are working on it, working on the delivery of these products. Oftentimes it requires working with people outside of the company as well as inside of the company. Okay, so that's chapter 10 in a brief, less than 20 minutes. Again, if you have any questions, you know, please be in touch. And next up will be chapter 11, when we talk about retailing and wholesaling. And that will, after chapter 11, that will wrap up the second portion of the class. Okay, thanks everyone.